Welcome to part 2 of orthographic drawing. The first part, we looked at this plug and we drew it in orthographic, meaning we drew it in 3 views, top, front and side. This is now more or less finished, and I've rubbed out some but not all of the lines that I no longer need. I've kept some in, but eventually I will rub those out as well. And you can see that I've finished it off and I've prepared some measurements. I'm going to fill these in. I'm not going to do all of them, and I'm going to show you the final result. I've also got this one here because it's just an example of a real piece of orthographic design that's been used in industry, and you can see how the measurements are written. So you notice there's no actual, it doesn't say millimeters or whatever the measurement, the specific measurement is. They haven't needed to put it because, as I've written up here, all measurements are in millimeters. You would write that on your drawing, so it makes it redundant to keep writing mm all the time. You don't need to. So, you know, this is, I don't know what this specific component is. I just found this image online, but you can just see. So there are some rules. So you can see that the arrowheads, should I say, at the end of each measurement are the same. Okay, there's not some arrows that are bigger, some arrows that are smaller. They are all uniform. They're all the same. And you can see that the text size is the same. There's not some text that is gigantic, some that is smaller, and it's all in the same typeface. Reason for that is you don't want any misunderstanding. If you were doing a drawing like this in industry and you were sending it off, you want it to be as uniform and as easily understandable as it possibly can be, because it will be handed over to someone who had no clue the design process. They are next in the production line, and they would obviously require this information in a clear and concise way. When I'm in lesson, I always say all arrows are accurate, and I do that on the board, and I do the little 4 little A's and an arrow. Basically just a way to remind yourself that, you know, that arrow should be the same as this one, should be the same as that one. It shouldn't have bigger and smaller ones. So we're going to have a go at doing that. The other thing I would say is sometimes, and specifically here, when you've got measurements where you've got a gap, so that measurement there reflects on the gap between here and here, that line, if I drag that down, okay, you might struggle. So you don't have to always put the arrow in the same place like this. You can have it on one edge on the outside, and this one's on the outside with just the number in the middle. So that's what we would do. We would do around here, but you'll see that when I show you the final drawing. What else? Thick and thin line technique. So before we apply a measurement, I would just make sure the outer lines, and I've done this here. I've finished it there. Okay, I'm going to take this away now. But I haven't done it. I've started it here, but I would just make sure the outer lines would have just a thicker line alongside, like that, all the way along. Likewise, with these individual pins of the plug, I would say that the outer line, so this outer rectangle, this one here, that would be thick and thin line technique, because that is the end of that component. But these inside lines, probably on the inside, I wouldn't. I would just, this is just to emphasize that these are separate components and they are protruding towards us. Okay, so that line would be thick and thin technique. This one, this one, this one, this one. That outer line would, but this, we're looking at that casing, this outer line would, but this inner one wouldn't. So hopefully that's straightforward. I've kept those in, but probably I would rub those out before I'm finished. And as I said, so if I'm putting these measurements in, I would say, okay, well, I want to do my arrows uniform, so I don't want them massive. And I'm not going to actually colour these in, I'm just going to draw them. My final one, I've shaded them, but hopefully you just get the idea like that. I don't want the arrows any bigger than that, really. And in fact, the ones I've drawn on my final one are probably even bigger than if I was doing this for real, I would have them even smaller. But I get the idea that they may not come up nicely on the camera. So I've drawn them a little bit bigger. Okay, I know this measurement is 45. So I'm going to write this as neatly as I can, like so. So every measurement I've written, I want it as neat as that and the same size. I then don't want this measurement here, which is 25 millimeters. I want to make sure it's the same size and just as neat. Okay, so something like that. That 5 probably would need to be a little bit taller. And you'd put your arrowhead in. Again, all arrows are accurate. You'd put your other arrow in like so. Okay, you would apply the thick and thin line technique. You'd probably rub all of these out. Okay, now as I said here, this is where it gets confusing. But before we get to that, I just want to say that we want to be efficient with our measurements. We don't want to keep giving the same information more times than we need to. If you've given that measurement there, that's 45 millimeters, well, that is going to be 45 millimeters. You don't need to put it twice. You don't need to put it again down here. Someone in a factory would understand, okay, that's that measurement. Likewise, this pin here, I've put the measurement there. So I don't then need to say on this side, that measurement's the same, exact same if we're looking at it that way, or, let's turn it that way. Hasn't changed. You're looking at it from a different angle, there to there, but it's the same measurement. So if you put it there, in a factory, they would understand, okay, I know what that is. This longer pin, I've placed here, and I've put that measurement, and I've written it there, meaning, again, this one, it's the same length, isn't it? That's the same length as that. You're just looking at a different angle. Okay, so you don't double up, you don't need to. You think to yourself, okay, where's the most concise and easy way to put these shapes? This width there is the same as that width there. So again, I've put it here once, I don't need to put it again there. So hopefully that makes sense. I've decided all of the in-between sections, how big the length of each pin, the height of each pin, the gaps in between, I've decided to write them all on one, this view. So I don't need to apply them to any others. So again, I've placed them out evenly. You notice these lines should all be the same height. I've done them about 1 centimetre in length, or 10 millimetres in length, and I've tried to, where possible, that one actually looks a little bit off, okay? But where possible, I've tried to make them about 1 millimetre gap from the item, and then 10 millimetres in length. So try and make those all the same, okay? And again, they should be parallel. Those measurements should line up with those measurements. I don't want these ones a little bit lower, these ones higher, these ones, they should all line up. The other thing I want to say is, we said this was a 1 to 2 scale, a 2 to 1 scale, but I am writing the measurement of this item. If this item is 45 millimeters in, I don't know if you can see that, but it is 45 millimeters in length, you are writing the size of the actual size. You're not writing it times 2, so you're not writing 90 here. Even though this picture is twice as big, the drawing, you're writing the measurements for the original item, okay? So measure it and then keep that original number. Don't do anything with it. Obviously, you had to double it when you were drawing, but in the factory, they're looking at the blueprints blown up, but really they want to know, and they're manufacturing, so what is its actual size, okay? So that's that. So next I would rub this out, I would apply all the thick and thin techniques, and I would apply all of my measurements. So that's what I've done here, okay? Now, as I say, I've tried to write it as neatly as possible. I've tried to, as much as I can, keep the numbers all the same size, and I've tried to keep the arrowheads. It is quite tricky, all of the same size. If you've got an item where you've got lots of shapes like so, lots of different measurements, that is really tricky. So that's how this isn't ideal, but obviously it's going to be harder to fit it in there because that's the smallest element of the whole thing. So I decided to put the measurement there, meaning there's gaps in between, and hopefully, you can fit it all in nicely. If you write it nice and neat and keep all of your arrows the same length, you should be able to succeed, okay? So that's that. I think we should give that a go and apply measurements. Generally, with orthographic drawings, you don't see colour because it's not about graphical information. It's not to promote, it's more of a, as I say, it's more blueprint. So you don't have to render these. It's quite rare that you would see a colour version of an orthographic drawing. Sometimes you do, but generally it is literally like a line drawing, black lines on a white piece of paper that is giving you the information. That's the purpose of the design. So your task, find a plug, as I said before. If you really want to stretch and challenge yourself, you could find a plug that has a more complicated shape. Okay, this is effectively the same plug. This detaches. It's a little bit different underneath, but it is the same size. You know, the casing is the same size. If you are confident just drawing a relatively straightforward plug like that, you can. If you want to stretch and challenge yourself and you want to find a more advanced plug, there are all manner of different type ones. If you've got an Apple or Android phone or whatever it is you have, I guarantee you'll have odd shaped plugs like this in the home. I think I've got another one here. This one. I've just turned my light off, so just bear with me. So give it a go while I put my light back on. And see what you come up with. If you're happy with just doing this, absolutely carry on, just do one like that. If you, as I say, really want to challenge yourself, go for a more advanced one. Complete your drawing, upload it, and I'll look forward to seeing what we come up with. All right, thanks guys.